Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for allowing me to come in and speak at my alma mater. I decided to entitle this presentation, What Football Has Taught Me About International Marketing. So I graduated here, 1995, class of 95. I got my first internship at the United Nations, and I started sort of learning the ropes of how to get a job, where to get the internships, started asking around, as long as I can, get in my foot in the door and start my career. I minored in poli-sci, in political science, because it's what interests me. So I took that minor, and after that internship, I got accepted to a master's program, which took me to Bologna, Italy. So I got accepted to Johns Hopkins University, which is a US-based university. I was lucky enough to get a partial scholarship, and I went to live in Italy. And you have to imagine that, I'm a Canadian student, so I live on Canadian aid, financial aid as a good Canadian student. So I went out there. I had little funds to basically survive in my new life in Italy, and I had to, be innovative. My roommates basically said to me, Albert, you're going to have to figure out a way to pay your rent. Otherwise, you're going to have to find a new place to live. And so one of them said to me, what you should be doing is you should go down to the local soccer association, and they offer a course on how to become a referee. I said, okay, I guess that's cool, but I don't really have that much time. I'm studying. I got to, maintain a certain GPA. And he said, no, you don't understand. They pay you in cash. Oh, okay. Well, that could be a good lead. And so that's what I did. I went down to the association, and I went there with a dictionary, just in case that I didn't understand what they were saying to me. And I took the first course. It was a week-long class. So on one hand, I had the laws of the game, FIFA laws of the game, and on the other hand, I had my Italian-English dictionary. And I sat there listening to all the rules in Italian, and trying to understand the lexicon, trying to learn how to interpret the game. I know about the game. I grew up playing the game, but not as a referee. I was just, out there having fun. At FIFA, later on, I learned there's a course at FIFA that's given. It's called How to Sell Your Calls in Different Languages. So how to sort of convince a player that you know what you're doing, or that you know how to officiate a game. And so here I am in Italy. I passed the class, barely, and I get my first game. And I guess I would tell you that this is probably my first lesson in international marketing, because I got a U10 boys game. So a bunch of young kids running around. And the first call came at the 4th minute of the game. 4 minutes into the game, I whistle, and I blow the whistle. I point to the fact that it's a foul. And this kid just kind of looks up at me and does this glare of saying to me, are you serious, man? And, that's fine, kid, move on. It's a foul. 2 minutes later, the same kid is involved in another foul. And this time he just does this to me. He's like, what are you doing to me? And I was like, okay, yeah. And of course, he uses this sound of to signify, obviously, his disgust of my calls. And so you can imagine that this 10-year-old kid had really had it in for me that day. He was out to completely destroy my refereeing career on game 1. So here comes the second half of the game. And lo and behold, the same kid is involved in a third foul. I whistle, and he just looks up at me, and this time he actually utters the word "ma va," and I have to stop to tell you what else follows after that sentence, because obviously this is a G-rated version of the course or of this lecture. So, the course that I took at FIFA later on taught me how to understand different swear words. And today, after years of working as a referee, I've learned about maybe 12 or 13 different languages on how to swear. Your mother's this, I hate you, you can go to hell, etc., etc. This is what I've learned. And this is what FIFA sort of taught me about Law 12, which is the rule for send-off, which is the red card. what's important here to understand is sort of understanding the local lingo, is understanding where you are, understanding your local market, understanding how I had to sell my call. I had to not only understand Italian, I had to understand sort of the in between the lines of understanding how this 10-year-old kid was telling me off. First game I did in Bologna was poor only because I lacked self-confidence in myself. But this 10-year-old boy kind of taught me the importance of understanding. The first rule is understanding where you are, understanding your markets. So life progresses. I finished my stint in Italy, and now it's time to pursue my academic career. So year 2 of the master's program, I moved to Washington, D.C. And there I signed up with the local federation, so the U.S. Soccer Federation. Moving into a different jurisdiction again forced me, of course, to understand the local market. So now I'm dealing with Americans. I'm no longer dealing with Italians. It was a lot more docile in terms of the swear words. It was a lot of innuendos, of course. And of course, when the F-bomb came out, so then I knew what to do because I already had that confidence there. I graduated with a master's in economics, and I quickly progressed into my first internship at the World Bank Group. And I started working in the Africa Technical Department, and my job was basically to design training programs for different African ministries of finance. So we would go in there and try to teach them how to better collect information on how to analyze economic trends within their country and how to prepare for a proper finance budget. Of course, while I was at the bank, I eventually got an opportunity to move, to travel. I went to Africa, later in the Middle East, and always learning sort of the valuable lessons of local culture, understanding local language, understanding how to understand sort of where your environment is. So I end up moving to Lomé in Togo, where I joined the local football association, and I started climbing the ranks of the CAF, the Confederation of African Football. And by the time I reached 29 years old, I was already a national level referee. I was working at the African Champions League, and I was traveling in different African countries, working as an official. And it was great. It was incredibly invigorating for me because, I had my economics degree, and I was working with the World Bank and working as a consultant as well. But football was where it was at for me. That was running through my veins, so that's what I wanted to do. I eventually moved back to Montreal, and when I did move back to Montreal, I applied to the local football association, soccer association, and it was a complete misconnect. I couldn't understand them, they couldn't understand me, they didn't trust my abilities, and so I decided to just leave. I actually moved to England. I went to Manchester, and there I hooked up with some buddies and joined the local FA in Manchester. And while I was there, I learned something new. It was something called the gentleman's game. I say, what's the gentleman's game? So it was basically a bunch of men and some women playing in a corporate league. And so what these guys were is that they work by day, so whatever they do, and at night they all get together to play a friendly game of soccer. And what I saw from these guys was that after they finish their game, they all hit the bars, they get drunk, and then they all go home. So everything is fine and dandy. But what it allowed me to realize is that I learned something new, and I realized that there's something interesting here in terms of corporate football. So these are grown men and women playing soccer once a week, every week, representing their companies, getting exercise, networking. So, this was good. This was actually quite interesting for me because I started understanding how maybe I can find a bridge of what I'm doing. I can't be a referee for the rest of my life. I was trying to get my FIFA badge, and unfortunately I never reached that badge. But I had to sort of retrench my career and try to redirect what I was doing. And so I came back here and started working for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I went to a conference, and I was sitting down next to a researcher, and the researcher was telling me that Quebec is actually going through an obesity crisis. I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, is that what you research? She says, yeah. I research obesity in kids, and we're reaching epidemic levels. I mean, that shocked me, the word epidemic. Epidemic means that 50% of society is obese. And that just seemed very strange for me. And she said, well, I said, well, what do you attribute this epidemic to? And she said to me, the real reason is that not only are kids inactive, but they don't have any positive role models. And then that struck me as strange. What do you mean no positive role models? All the professional athletes out there, I mean, surely some kids must be looking forward or looking up to some of these players. Well, what she said to me really hit me. And she said, well, the real role model is mommy and daddy. If your parents are not active, then you're not active. If they are active, then guess what you're going to do? And so that hit me as an epiphany. And I said, I finally found what I really want to do. And so I want to bring together adults, play soccer. It's what I like. It's what I enjoy. And put them on the field. Bring them out of the community, of the corporate community. So I was working at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I was in front of some of the largest companies in Quebec, espousing doing some promotion on what Canadian commerce should look like. And I started a corporate soccer league. And so I spent a year cold calling companies. I called most of the CEOs. Most of them rejected me. I found 120 players on 6 teams, 6 companies, and we started playing actually at Concordia. That was 12 years ago. Fast forward to 12 years today, we are now 12,000 players, 350 companies. And we participate 11 months of the year, all levels of soccer from 11-a-side, 7-a-side, 5-a-side. Training, I mean, we do all of it, and it's all corporate. It's all companies, individuals working, engineers, doctors, lawyers, plumbers, electricians, you name it, everybody's involved. After the first season, so one of the teams won, and they came up to me and says, "Oh, great, we won." So I said, yeah, "Congratulations, yeah, great." So Albert, what's next? What's next? I said, "Go to the bar and get drunk. What do you want from me?" He says, "No, you don't understand. Like, what's next?" So that got me thinking again, and of course, I'm an economic analyst, so I started analyzing the market and I started looking at what's really out there. Is there another tournament? Can this winning team represent Montreal and go somewhere? So I spent a lot of time researching this, and I realized that it doesn't exist. Well, so if it doesn't exist, why don't you just build it? And so I spent first year analyzing the market, then I spent a couple of years with lawyers trying to set up trademarks and things like that, and spending a tremendous amount of money. And then I started traveling to the different countries wherever these corporate soccer leagues existed, and I would meet with these different individuals, different organizers. And that was 10 years ago when I started that process. And now, 10 years forward, as of today, we are now 60 countries, 2.5 million players around the world. And we participate in all kinds of corporate soccer activities. Now, you have to imagine, these are corporations, these are companies. Some people are 25 years old, some people are 65 years old, and we all play together. Men, women, we're around the world. And so this brings me to my second lesson, and that's strategy. So the question I kept asking myself is, how do I differentiate myself on the local and eventually on the global market? So I needed to create a way to accredit the local league through membership in some sort of worldwide federation. You had to see corporate soccer as being an official league, that you would be playing in this league, and that if you would win this league, then you would go on to the next level and represent your company, represent your country in a foreign tournament. I was the first member of FIFCO. It was the Canadian Corporate Soccer League, which is my company. And I invested time, effort, money. And the idea was very simple. I wanted to create a governing body. So imagine, I wanted to create FIFA. How crazy is that? No, seriously, how crazy is that? FIFA has 11.5 billion Swiss francs in their bank account. Who am I to compete with that? Are you serious? And so I basically started building this one step at a time. I visited all these 60 countries, and I sat down in front of individuals, different organizers. Not everybody was friendly to me. Not everybody liked what I was doing. I received a lot of negative at first, and of course, eventually it became more positive because we are 60 countries strong. But it allowed me to develop this league on a different angle. You see, so what I did is that I stood out. Canadian Corporate Soccer League is not like any other beer league that you just show up to and you play and then you hit the bars. No, you're actually playing for something. So, we have companies like Ubisoft, companies like Gameloft, some of the largest gaming companies, BMO, RBC, you name it, they're all there. Their own employees, good, bad, or ugly, they're all there. And so the next step was to develop this product or this service and to at least appear as the authority. FIFCO, the International Federation of Corporate Football, which is what I built, had to come across as an authority. And of course, this is not an easy task. My number one challenge is FIFA. They govern the game. But you see, I was very lucky because timing is everything in life, as you all know. And at the same time that I started building this federation, it was the same time that FIFA was going through some very nasty scandals. This was not going to be sort of a David and Goliath battle. This was just, they're doing their thing, and I'm here in Montreal doing mine. And traveling, meeting, and building on it. And so this brings me to my third lesson, which is targeting and segmentation. So who is my market? Should be a good question, right? Who am I marketing to? Who am I addressing? There are 250 million active soccer players around the world. There are 3 billion people who watch the game regularly. 3 billion. Who would want to play? Who would want to represent their company? Who would want to have, or who would have the skill set, let alone the stamina to participate in a game? The global sporting industry is worth $650 billion. Soccer events alone are worth $28 billion. The global wellness market is $3.7 trillion. And the global fitness industry is worth $542 billion. My market is the adult working community seeking to change their habits. So according to the World Health Organization, 27.5% of working people do not meet the minimum physical activity guidelines. 1 in 4 just don't do enough exercise. Inactive adults cost the global healthcare system in sick days and lost productivity $67.5 billion a year. That's how much they lose every single year. Every single year there are 5 million deaths. And the cause is inactivity. It's a big number to think about, that 5 million people leave this earth because they're just not active. And according to the research, group competition increases the likelihood of regular exercise by 90%, which means that the chances of you just going out to the gym and working out every day, you might do that for a while, but you'll quickly lose interest. But if you do that in a group, some sort of group activity, you have 90% chance of sticking to that and growing with that. So I have to target a global audience that works and that are seeking change. The median demographic for me is a male aged 25 to 45. My research led me to realize that the average player who plays corporate football is 31 years old and has a household income of about $130,000 in PPP, purchasing pricing parity. This is a really nice target. These are people who have the means, who are obviously very comfortable, and who can participate. So I was able to narrow down my market to 55 million people worldwide. That's who I'm targeting. We now have 2.5 million members in our association. Last year, I traveled to India and to China, and our Indian partners already have 600,000 players in their database. They're projecting to reach 1.2 million in the next 18 months. The Chinese have 5 million players. numbers that are so hard sometimes to really put or grasp. So lesson number 4 is, how do I position myself? So it's a really touchy lesson because, who am I? Who is FIFCO? That's the name of our organization. Why should anyone listen to me? Who cares? I started investing in the trips to meet potential organizers of events, sporting, leagues, developing relationships. I became a salesperson. The first time I landed in Paris to meet the French president of the Corporate Sporting Association in Paris, he took one look at me and he says, "What can a Canadian like you teach me about the game?" I said, "Okay, fair enough." I traveled to Tel Aviv to meet the president of Hapoel Sporting Association, and he said to me, "I really like what you're doing, but there's no way I'm joining you." Okay, it's fair. I traveled to Banjul, Gambia, smallest country in Africa. I met the Minister of Sport, received me in his office, sat me down, and the first thing that came out of his mouth is, "What are you going to do for me?" Selling this organization has never been easy, because you always need to have that message. It must resonate in a common way. Everybody must listen and must hear the same message. And so I decided to really focus on common values. And those common values had to be for everyone. Everyone had to sort of relate to these common values. And those 4 common values was, I was out there to promote a healthy lifestyle through the sport. I wanted everybody to get off their chair and be active. That's the way I saw it. Life had to be more than just sitting behind the screen. When I was working in Ottawa, or when I was working in Africa, the World Bank, I was behind the screen. It's great, don't get me wrong. I love the screen. But life has to be more than that. I wanted to promote an office team building. I want to promote international networking, and I want to promote the fact that this is just an amateur game. We're a bunch of amateurs. We're professionals by day in what we do in our fields, in our respective fields. But at the end of the day, we're just amateurs. So this actually started to resonate. And I finally convinced a country like Iraq to join. I don't understand a word the guy says to me, but he joined. He said to me that in Baghdad there is about 1,000 players playing. I never would have thought that. I convinced the Iranians. It took me 4 years to convince Iran to join. They have 450,000 players. This is not a small number. 450,000 players around the country playing this game. And I managed to convince them only because we had an intern who spoke Persian. And he opened up the floodgates of communications. We convinced Saudi Arabia to join. Namibia, Cape Verde, recently, a couple of weeks back. Nigeria, Peru. All these countries started to fall into place only because they understood the message was there. But not everyone believes that I should be the sounding board to this organization and to this message. The challenges are great and difficult to get countries interested and involved constantly. I recently, 2 weeks ago, I traveled to Portugal, and then I hop-skipped into Croatia, and I was supposed to meet our local organizer in Zagreb. I have an 8-hour window to be in Zagreb. I landed in the morning, and my local host is supposed to be there to meet me. I had already planned it out. We've been communicating back and forth, and I left and moved on to my next destination, which was in Belgrade. This brings me now to my next lesson, which is international distribution. So how do I spread this message? FIFCO establishes a working relationships with every single country on an exclusive basis. Every single country I go to, every single person that I meet, every single organizer, it's always one-on-one. We're building a relationship one-on-one. We work with all kinds of organizers, whether event planners, league managers, corporate event organizers, and we'll sign exclusivity contracts. The fee, we charge a fee, obviously, because that's the way we have to survive. But the fee for them, some countries have told me the fee is very high, but it's the only way to get skin in the game. if I want to invest in you, you must invest in me. And so I get them to sign a contract, which is legally binding. They pay a fee, and we start building together. We issue a global strategy, a branding policy. So this is the way I tie them in. We have a specific logo that we want you to use. We show you how to use it. We have a very specific branding policy on how you can, promote what we do in a different setting on your social media, etc., etc. Which now, obviously, in terms of branding policy, so now what's my international product policy? How do you make sure that everyone follows the same message? How do you make sure that the brand is respected and the guidelines are followed? So just through a simple document, communication, calling, working. So I was in Cairo last year working with our local partners. And, Albert, we like what you're doing, but, we don't understand how to use the logo. Oh, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make sure that you're all following that same message, that same way, so that way we can actually build a global brand. So that way, everywhere around the world, they will see this brand as one standard thing. So, how do we how do we actually fund this organization? Because it's not only the membership fees. Do we get any subsidies? Do we get any sponsorship? Government does not help us. We've never received 1 penny from government anywhere that we operate. We work a lot with sponsorship. So you can imagine with 2.5 million players, there's a database for us to work with. How do we work with pricing? So how do we price ourselves that we can actually be sustainable and keep moving? So it's a very, very tough exercise. This is a very tough job because I basically built something that never was there and moved it forward 10 years. I still don't make a salary. But I'm very happy doing what I'm doing, mostly because I believe in the message. And I also believe in what I'm doing in terms of how I'm changing certain people's lives. I can sit here until tomorrow morning to tell you stories on how people's lives have changed. I remember one case in particular where this one gentleman who was really miserable with himself because he didn't like seeing what he saw when every time he saw himself in the mirror. Albert, you shouldn't be looking at me this way because when I was young, I was a striker. So what's stopping you to become a striker again? He worked at it, changed his life, changed his habits, started playing, made a complete about face of himself and changed completely. He wasn't the same person when I went to visit him again. When I saw him the next time, I was completely dumbfounded. I mean, this was a man weighing about 130 kilos, and today, 70 kilos. So you lost a person. What I will tell you that what I've learned over the years of trying to build a career in international business or international marketing, and what I've learned from this organization and what I can confer to you is understand where you are, understand where the opportunities are. It will be cliche if I told you just follow your dreams. You got to follow reality. Build a career, do what you enjoy, and you'll be very impressed to see how opportunities sort of come your way, and they'll knock at your door. Be open to them. Be open-minded to say that these opportunities could mean something. I was an economist. I worked at the World Bank. I used to work with Paul Martin when he was finance minister way back when. I'm doing football. How do I explain that to my kids? Dad, you go out and you play soccer? No, I'm actually building something, and I'm very proud of what I'm building, and I'm very happy that I actually took those opportunities and those chances to get to where I am today. To conclude, I think that the most important thing is that to realize that you're building your own careers and you're building your own visions. Go out there and sort of let the discovery embrace you, and embrace that discovery and see where life brings you. Thank you very much.